And now I'll just say as well, and thanks very much to TTC Global for partnering with us on this event and providing the catering for those of you who get to sit here and eat that with us. So yeah, TTC are great friends of Govis and really passionate about supporting the professionalisation of testing in particular. And so there's a real synergy, I think, here with the SFIA event, understanding the competency around testing and so on. So with that, I'll pass over to Simon from TTC to introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, my name's Simon Morris, Principal Consultant with TTC. Been with TTC just over 3 years and mainly in the field of sort of software test management and helping a lot of government agencies with their testing. Thank you everybody for coming along to today's Govis ITB event on Navigating Your Career with SFIA. Today we've got Vic MacLennan speaking. Vic's the CEO of IT Professionals. For those that don't know ITP is the professional body of the IT industry. It provides networking, mentoring, certification, and it also advocates for the IT industry. And Vic often meets with government ministers and other representatives of the training bodies and everything else like that. ITP also provides courses, help upskill yourself in the IT industry. And we've also worked with ITP also works with the education sector through outreach programs such as the Tech Hub and Tai Rua Toru Tech. So Vic is also a member of the SFIA Global Council. And also present today we have Professor Elizabeth Valentine. Elizabeth is an expert on transformation leadership capabilities and governance. And Elizabeth's been utilising SFIA to help clients and students since 2016. Maybe for those, I'll just do a very quick thing for those who are not familiar with SFIA. SFIA gives individuals and organisations a common language to define skills and expertise in a consistent way. So just clarifies there's lots of technology in that industry and what are the skills required and for the types of roles we have. And it provides a framework consisting of professional skills and levels of responsibility. So a map of skills with level of responsibility. And why that's useful to organisations like TTC, I mean, it helps industry, it helps employers understand it provides consistency to skill sets, understanding where people are on their career, on their skills development and the type of skills they have. So it makes life a wee bit easier in terms of recruitment and candidate selection and career development. So with that, I'd like to introduce Vic to get us going with today's presentation.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, everyone. Kia ora koutou ko Victoria MacLennan, toka wingoa, but please call me Vic. I will talk a little bit about who I am in a second. But I'm here to talk about all things SFIA today, which I heard was super fancy intelligent aliens just before. I think that's a great name. We came up with that one. I only have 3 things to discuss. Why SFIA here in Aotearoa, just in case anyone hasn't heard me tell that story before. And I was pleased to see Paul Ramsey's on the call, so he'll keep me honest as to what I make up about what we did back in the day when we chose it. And what's new in SFIA 9, because it's pretty hot topic at the moment. I can't control my own slides.
Here you go. I'll pass. Just use your keys and you're away.
Fab, yeah. Thank you. It's quite funny. I'm used to having a clicker. So who am I? Please call me Vic, as I mentioned. I'm a portfolio person. I have a day job, which Simon just described. I've been about 2 years now as CEO of IT Professionals, and a lot of people know IT Professionals as the former New Zealand Computer Society. It was formed 64.5 years ago, and I imagine a bunch of men sitting around in a room going, oh, we're all working with these computer things, we should have a club. And so they started a club and they gave it a name. At that point, it was the Data Processing and Computer Society. And then that club changed to be called the New Zealand Computer Society to be consistent with the rest of the world. So there's the Australian Computer Society, the British Computer Society, the Canadian Computer Society. But then at some point in time, the members decided they didn't want to be called a computer society anymore and renamed themselves to be IT Professionals. And this is being recorded so people will hear me say it, I spend most of my time explaining what IT professionals is, and I say we're a computer society. I get this aha moment from people, so it's interesting. I do wear some other hats. Mostly my career was, I was a techo for a long time. Then I went and started my own data services business, Optimal BI, which I still own. I went through a phase of investing in lots of tech companies, so I still own shares and have share options coming out my ears that will never convert into dollars in a number of startups around town. But then for the last few years, since I've been in my 50s, I've got really focused in the not-for-profit space, and the other hats I wear are all focused on closing the digital divide and how do we upskill everyone, as well as, with my hat with IT professionals, how do we improve the skills, capabilities of the profession as a whole? So I'll talk a bit about that. I do like cartoons, and we commission a weekly cartoon. So for anyone who subscribes to my partner, you would have seen these cartoons over the years. Fabulous man called Brendan Bowen, who calls them cartoons for Cartoons by Jim, makes me a weekly cartoon. So it's all my IP that I am actually sharing with you now. I also speak very plainly and bluntly, so I'll be very plain, blunt and forthright in the next 10 minutes. So we're in really unusual times. You all work for government, so you know how unusual it is. People are being laid off, restructuring. Many of you, your roles may be contestable. You may not be going to lose your job, but you're in a position where you're having to contest for your role. So we're in a very strange time, and a lot of the casualties of the cost savings in government have hit back office functions, which includes digital technologies, but also we're in a recession, maybe not a recession, so the private sector is also struggling with strange and unusual times, and a lot of commercial companies are also laying people off. So we're in this cartoon is actually from a few years ago, but I thought it was just really relevant for this topic for the times that that we're in today when headcounts are changing. And technology changes every day, as we know. You know, who knew there was going to be LLMs and generative AI 2 years ago? Like, none of us would have predicted the world that we're in today. It changes every day. So the expectations on us as people who work in this industry and the skills and capabilities that we develop are increasing every day, and the demands from our employers can be quite phenomenal. So really important to just set that context. So why SFIA? Well, actually, what I thought I'd cover is why skills frameworks generally. I have a tendency, if you've heard me speak before, to talk about our industry as the wild, wild west. We're not as mature as other industries. We haven't been around as long as other industries. So we don't have that consistency. And yet at the same time, what we do, the software and hardware that we produce, probably everyone is more likely to be in software than hardware. So the software that you're involved in and producing has an increasingly important role. The software controls the cars that we drive and the switching of electricity as it distributes around the overhead wires. You know, software has such an important role in so many different functions and industries, and can cause, if there are faults with it, can cause actual physical harm to people these days, which no one had ever envisaged back in the day. But then software is also incredibly important for when you think about the perspectives of everything we do in everyday life. And, you know, I'm wedded to this thing. My whole life is on this phone. If I ever lost it, I don't know what I'd do, actually, so please don't steal it off me. And so what we do has such a large impact on everyone today. So I'm sure you really understand that. So building maturity into our industry, but also consistency into our workforce. And I often use an example where I talk about there can be two different people doing the same job, and because I'm a data person, I usually choose a data example. So there might be someone who calls themselves a data wrangler and someone over here who calls themselves a data engineer. They're actually doing exactly the same job, but they've got different titles. People in HR don't understand either of them. So they might be earning something completely different, even though they're doing exactly the same thing in the same organisation. So creating fairer practices and mechanisms for comparing people's skills and capabilities. And I'll bet everyone here's been in a performance review one day where the manager doesn't really understand what they do, and they have this really subjective way of measuring what you've achieved. So frameworks can also be useful for that kind of mechanism, as in I'm at SFIA, and you'll hear more about the levels and things from Lizzie later, but I'm currently at SFIA level 3 for the skills that you're measuring me against. And I've spent the last year getting myself to level 4, and it's actually a tangible measurement. It's not just a subjective, your manager thinks you're doing a bit better, or whatever your manager might think. So there's a lot of really positive ways why we need skills frameworks. This cartoon actually came out when the floodgates opened post-COVID and the borders opened, and all the headlines were about our youngest and brightest leaving the country. Thank you, GovTech grads, for still being here to my right. For about our youngest and brightest leaving the country and how we had a brain drain. And again, for our people, the talent that we're growing here, to be competitive on a global stage, frameworks are also really important so that you can demonstrate on your CV, I have achieved these things against this internationally recognised competency framework, and employers overseas can see it and go, actually, I get that, I can look that up and I can see it's an international thing, or they might already use it, as many employers in Australia already do, which I'll touch on a little bit later on. The other thing I wanted to mention on this page, a few weeks ago I wrote a blog about the dramatic decline in investment in digital technology education here in Aotearoa and how important it is. Between 2010 and 2023, domestic training in digital technology declined across the board by 33%. So it means 33% less people enrolling in digital tech courses in high schools and vocational education and tertiary education. And the government's investment in tertiary provision in digital tech declined by $22 million in the same period. So we've got to really lift our game. And again, I believe that a framework like SFIA can help us with that, by having that consistency of what are we teaching and why. So why SFIA in Aotearoa? I thought you might like to hear the potted history slightly. The most important thing is SFIA is globally recognised. There is a SFIA Foundation based in the UK, chaired by the chair of the British Computer Society. So the biggest computer society in the world has a governance role in the SFIA Foundation. The foundation is a not-for-profit, it's a charity, and it has kind of 4 different layers of governance involved there. There is that board, they have the operational team, there's a design authority or a design group where you can give all your ideas to, and they will incorporate them into the next versions of SFIA. And there's a thing called the SFIA Global Council, which is a collection of stakeholders of really the computer societies around the world, which is the group that I'm on. Unfortunately, they have all their meetings at 5 a.m. or 11 p.m, so I'm often a bit of a zombie on some of those. But I first learned about SFIA back in 2016, and this is why Paul Ramsey will correct me after this when I get all the dates wrong. But back in 2018, there was an initiative, which was a cross-government, cross-industry initiative called the Digital Skills Forum, which had been originally set up by Amy Adams when she was minister, but I've got a feeling Peter Dunn was the minister at the time. And we realised that people around government agencies were already using different skills frameworks for measuring their digital technology workforce's capabilities. And so we commissioned a research project, which MBIE actually led, and they looked at all of the global frameworks that there were for skills and capability in digital tech. They talked to government agencies who were and weren't using a framework. They also surveyed workers across government, and we stressed really importantly that we wanted a framework that focused on outcomes and behaviours, and the SFIA framework emerged as being the preferential one, already quite widely adopted back in 2018 across New Zealand government agencies in different pockets, not particularly consistently. And it was considered to be really flexible and adaptable. So in 2022, the Digital Technologies Industry Transformation Plan, which as you all know, the transformation plans have all been scrapped now, funded a New Zealand licence for the SFIA framework. So you can go to the website and you can use it kind of in a very general way. But with a licence, you can log in and you can use other features. You can join community group discussions. You can attend webinars. There's a whole lot of other activities you can do with that licence. And so that licence was purchased. So Paul's adding our other criteria was it was also regularly maintained and updated. Yes, that was really important. We found there were frameworks around the world that were sitting quite dormant. So the government funded that. So anyone in New Zealand, you don't just have to work for the government, can use this licence, and commissioned a project which the lovely Sophie, who is going to wave to the camera now, from DIA is leading, which has been looking at how New Zealand government can adopt SFIA. So that project has done its initial mapping phase and is about to embark on its next phase of activity, and has been looking really closely at what the Australian Public Service has done, because they are probably the world leading public service. They've mapped all of the roles in the Australian government. They have SFIA-based position descriptions for every role in the Australian government. They've also outsourced it. Any of us can go and have a look at it. I think it's fantastic what they've done. And the reason, even though I, ostensibly sit on the private sector side of the fence, think it's really important for government to do this, is because there's lots of spillover between people as they move around roles. So, and with all of that stuff in the Australian Public Service in the public domain, I point people there all the time. They say to me, I need position description for blah, and I'm like, go there first, because it's open sourced and you can all use it. So thank you, Sophie, for joining the call, so you could give that wave out to everyone. So the last thing I wanted to talk about really was SFIA 9. And Paul made the point that this framework is continuously updated. There was a bit of a quiet lull period over COVID, like with everything else, when not a lot happened. It was difficult for the foundation to get things moving and get funding from their funders to pay for updates. But SFIA 9 is coming out, and I just really like this cartoon, which is why you've got that one to look at today, around digital fluency and continued success. So SFIA 9 came out in beta last week. Anyone who subscribes to the newsletters will have already seen that, and it's going to be out for real in October. Those of us on the council have got a series of webinars this week, and then there will be some public webinars coming up over coming months that you can join to learn more about SFIA 9. A lot of the focus on this new version has been around improved user experience, because a lot of the feedback, including from me, and I pass this on all the time, is you go to the website and it's a little bit daunting. There's a lot of text there. So a lot of what we'll see in SFIA 9 will be around that improved user experience. There's been a lot of focus on new roles and skills like AI, for example, and incorporating AI into different roles and where does AI sit across the framework. Quite a bit of focus on cybersecurity. In the US, the NIST people are now lining up with SFIA, so there's a lot of work happening in the cybersecurity space. So SFIA will be the base kind of framework to be used, and a lot of focus on the data space, because there's a lot of emerging roles there. One of the things that is coming out in SFIA 9 that I don't think is in the public domain, but I think it's really important, is they've come out with badging, which you may or may not have seen, making the badging more accessible. And to be able to do that kind of base level, I'm competent at using the SFIA framework, you no longer need to have gone on an expensive training course or had an expensive consultant teach you. You can actually, anyone will be able to engage with the badging system and do the various online tests that they will have. Doesn't matter the pathway that you got there. So that's a change, and I think that's fantastic, because people are much more self-service these days than they used to be. I'm very worried I've gone over time. So thank you for listening to me. I'm going to hand over to Lizzie now, who's going to talk to you a lot more about the framework itself. If you want to find me or stalk me again, these are my deets. I write a weekly pānui. I usually mention SFIA every couple of weeks, so there will be something in there. I ad hoc, probably once a month, write a blog about SFIA as well. So, and particularly as SFIA 9 is coming out, I'll be writing a lot more updates. So yeah, just kind of keep an eye on it all.
Just change over the yes. And just while I'm doing that, I was wondering, Lizzie, would you like to do some of those polls before you do your talk now, or maybe start and then?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Positive. All right. Rebecca, do you have that first one available there somewhere?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can look for it too. All right, slideshow.
Should be live now.
Excellent. I've got a presenter mode here too. So the first question was, what is, if we're in the information age right now, what's your role? And this is just understanding a little bit about who you are and what you do. And once this loads up, we'll hopefully see what your answers are. And we'll just keep this pretty quick. I don't want to take away from the main presentation. So yeah, continue typing, that's good. There we go. I'm going to say I'm a policy writer.
Policy wonka.
Yeah. We've got brokers, we've got knowledge and information people.
Where's our business analysts?
Yeah.
They're too busy.
Jaded veteran.
Jaded veteran, I love it. Jaded veteran.
We'll give you just 10 more seconds and then we'll go to the next one. Digital preservation, yep.
And this is why SFIA really cuts through it doesn't matter what you call your role, but the way that you build your position description, your competencies can be quite specific.
That was a great point about same competencies, different job titles. So,
and also
excellent.
Different pay.
Yeah,
the thing that gets me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, next one. So what is your experience of SFIA? Select all that apply. I think there's quite a few options here. Right from what is SFIA? Never heard of it until today. Right down to being a SFIA Jedi. There's probably too many options to display on the screen, so this one might not work so well.
Don't you love live polling?
Knowledgeable. It'd be interesting if anyone's job description is actually based on SFIA. But there are a few people saying.
I've had one.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely.
I've definitely worked with some agencies job descriptions, so there should be people.
They might not know.
This is true, actually.
Yeah, it's a deliberate strategy through HR usually, but they may not be. They'd have to go into the competency sets to figure that out. And look, there you go. There's your 11%.
Yeah, that's something.
That's awesome.
I'm in the used it a little by myself sort of category, I think.
Where's the raving fan category?
Yeah, well, I didn't think of that. But we can add a new option for you.
I'm out now, fully out.
SFIA Jedis.
SFIA Jedi, there you go.
That's, yeah, fair enough. Okay, and the final poll. So how important is it to recruit for competencies? If I zoom out slightly, we can see everything at once. Okay.
Oh, this is music to my heart. Look at that.
Yeah. You all know what the right answer is, don't you?
Yeah. It's the top one.
Yeah.
Only slightly biased. Confirmation bias.
All right, thanks everybody. Yeah, here we go.
Rock and roll. Alrighty, thank you. Kia ora mai tātou, ko Lizzie Valentine, tōku now. I'm an adjunct professor of practice at Victoria University, which means that I actually can do stuff. I'm not particularly an academic, came to it late in life, spent 10 years of my career as a CEO, and I've also been a CIO. So a bit of background, I started out with SFIA when SFIA 8 was still around in the early 2010s and analysed SFIA in depth because I was looking for competency sets for boards of directors in the area of IT governance. And I've got to tell you, all these years on, the competencies are still not there. The stats have said that those people that are making the big decisions for you and I at the top of the pile, between 50 and 20%, depending on which survey. So if you look at all the surveys out of the big consultancies around the world, and some academic surveys, they will tell you that on average, about 15 to 20% of boards and senior leaders have got the right competencies. So it's a bit scary, and I'm at that age where, look, honestly, competency is just deeply attractive. I'm out. Yeah, really, think about it. Think about the best boss, best team, best colleague you ever had, and those people who just can get the job done. They're competent. So I think it's really important, and this is, I guess, some of my research work, is that there's a lot of mix-ups about what capabilities are and what competencies are. Here's my you blokes version of exactly what that is. So at the very top, you've got a whole industry sector. So civil aviation, we had someone from CAA, I've got an aviation background. You've got aviation or building or marketing specific type competencies at an industry. You've also then got unique capabilities in organisations. So think about where the big disruptors are at the moment, the Teslas, the BYDs in vehicle manufacturing. Those are very specific competitive capabilities that make them stand out. They're unique and difficult to replicate. But here's the kick. Capabilities are built from building blocks, and those building blocks are competencies. And so that can either be at a team level, it can be also at across teams, and it's most definitely you and I. So think about your attractiveness as an employee, or as what you want to attract as an employer, and use my analogy of competency being deeply attractive. So here we go. There's lots of things around industries. Just to summarise, this is around competitive advantages at an organisational level. Where it starts to get really practical is the lack of analysis at that next level, which says, here's our business plan, or here's our annual plan with the minister. Now let's do a review and identify what is going to be strategy matching. Keywords came out of a Canadian academic, but strategy matching competencies are what will build organisational capability. And then, of course, yours, when you're applying for a job or looking to improve your employment prospects, probably also need to either closely match a job description or closely match the strategy that your organisation, for-profit, not-for-profit, government, private sector, doesn't matter. These are generalisations that seem to fit across. So building blocks of capabilities are competencies. So Vic touched on this very briefly, and I'm not going to dwell on it. You can go onto the SFIA site and look at this stuff, but there are 7 levels of responsibility. I've been whittering on about the need for an 8th level, which actually hits those. I know, hush my mouth, but it's still not quite there for boards of directors. But level 7 definitely applies to our more senior people, and so on and so forth. Well, there we go. Look at that. Love the tech when it works. So those top levels are around senior management. The middle levels, levels 4 and 5, even 3, 4 and 5 can be around supervisory through to your middle and rising levels of senior management. And then you've got your skilled professionals, can be from anything from level 3 right up to level 7. And then you've got people who are right at the very beginning. They might need a bit more, they might need you to be more specific. And this tends to be on a bit of a learning curve down the bottom. So this is embodied inside SFIA. And the importance of this, of course, is that competent people have got a growing confidence So you'll know these people. When you're good at your job, you're confident in your job. So confidence also impacts productivity and morale. So my last slide actually gives you some stats around the the business case for building competency. But if you think about what drives employee satisfaction, people understanding their jobs, understanding what it is that it's going to take and being supported in doing a good job, has implications for these two factors. I feel more confident when I am competent, I know what I'm doing, and therefore that affects my productivity and my morale. And that can be at an organisational, team or individual level. So what are individual competencies? Well, let's break that down just a tiny little bit. If you're in the business, for example, of doing job descriptions, or you're looking at job design or even organisation design, then you've got an interest in core competencies. What does absolutely everybody need? So if you're in the manufacturing business, you're going to need competencies and capabilities in manufacturing. Then you might actually break that down into automotive manufacturing or clothing manufacturing or whatever. You might then need to think about how that works between teams or between individuals in a team, and then the technical functional competencies that you need. So core competencies tend to be those things around personal qualities, your communication skills, some of your perhaps more technical skills, but your cross-functional ones tend to be things like your teamwork, and then you get into the very technical skills per job, especially in IT and information systems. So, like I say, I'm a bit of a raving fan. What you might not know about SFIA is that for quite some time now, since at least version 7, SFIA's been aligning with those bodies of knowledge. So if you think about the project management body of knowledge, the business analyst body of knowledge, last time I counted, there were current 55 bodies of knowledge. The importance of that is, of course, is that if you're in any kind of an occupation where you need to do professional development, it's really useful to understand the competencies that you might need to build to continue to build your profession associated, for example, with project management. I use it. I use the BABOK, the Business Analyst's body of knowledge, in two very specific ways. For one thing, I teach at Victoria University on the Masters of Business Analysis. So obviously the business analysis body of knowledge is kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm constantly trying to influence my education clients around utilising SFIA and the bodies of knowledge, because if you think about it, those are internationally recognised. Why wouldn't you be aligning your skills and qualifications with a recognised body of knowledge? And then I have the great joy of having one of my master's students here, this is E, when they first come into my course, which is Digital Transformation Consulting Practice. They do a pre-test. So what I've done is I've designed an online pre-test, just a simple test in Microsoft Forms that touches on the big categories in the business analyst body of knowledge. So that's a range of different things. To summarise, you've got a bunch of bodies of knowledge that may or may not be relevant to your industries or the industries that you're primarily dealing with. And then you've got the licence that Vic talked about, where you can go in and you can utilise the appropriate competency sets to do things like setting up pre-tests or whatever. So there's lots of guides inside the site. There's editable tools, and these curated views are just fantastic. That means that if I'm a business analyst, I can go in, find a curated view all about the skills that a business analyst needs and which government department isn't massively interested in competent business analysts, and getting it right. If I've got time, I'll tell you a small story about getting it wrong and why it can actually save you time and money to get it right. So what SFIA does and what you can do as Vic also alluded to, is you can utilise these if you were reviewing or redesigning a job and going into your job descriptions. So they're all there. And really, I think the trick here is to not go into the minute detail that's available to you, but to really ask the question, what capability does this person need to have to do a good job? And therefore, what competencies should I be employing for? What are they going to be capable of? And therefore, what competencies are going to be absolutely central to this person doing a good job? And there's a view of the level of detail. So what you're seeing there is the 3 columns. You've got change implementation, change analysis, change planning. That's just some of the detail under change and transformation. Now, what senior leader doesn't need change and transformation as a capability, but what type of change are they currently doing in the business plan? Remember, strategy matching, and then what are they specifically going to be need to be capable of in the next, say, financial period? And those are the kinds of detailed and granular analyses that you can do. Here's another way that I used it when I was CIO at one of New Zealand's largest universities. What I did was to look at where I had at-risk people, risk of flight in the technical area in particular, and again utilised SFIA to say, okay, what do we need? Is it in UX design? Is it in programming? Where is it? What's happening? And I then partnered with Skillsoft, who are also on the Global Council, the largest e-learning company in the world, and they have curated courses that align with SFIA around these kinds of things. So there is actually a solution, probably for our smaller organisations, you'd need to think about it, but for our big organisations, the business case makes a lot of sense. So you can do everything through Skillsoft, Percipio, right through to IT licensing specific. You just then have to do the extra, you just have to pay for the exam. Now, you may have a view on how that sits with your offerings, Vic, but this is definitely one of the ways that I used it. So they were strategy matching, they were aligned, and of course, inside a big IT department, you've got multiple roles. And these Aspire journeys that Percipio curated were a fantastic way. So I used it to keep people, to educate people, and to provide career progression and development for people. So just a couple more slides then. To summarise, I think that SFIA is a fantastic tool for those who get involved in strategic evaluation. For people that are in consulting roles like myself, I think it's really important when somebody says we've got a big digital transformation coming up. First question is, what the heck do you mean by that? Because of course digital, data and technical transformation are not the same. They've got different goals, but that's another whole blog. But they do need to be strategy matching in terms of your organisation strategy. Oops, sorry, wrong direction. They do need to be strategy matching, but you can design your organisation strategy for capability. So you make sure that you've got the right competencies and the right levels and the right places for the right reasons. I've got to tell you that it is extremely rare that you will find a board or a senior team that will do a capability review on a regular basis. But I predict that from the point of view of digital transformation in your organisations, if you really want to hit gold, conduct an annual, if not annual, biannual capability review. And that's the kind of cascade that you can talk about in terms of what are we trying to do, what sector are we in, what's our strategy, what are we trying to transform or do in our business, what measures of performance do we need to have aligned with our capabilities, how good's our management and leadership at doing this, Are they actually capable? And, you know, I won't do a show of hands, but I've done a show of hands in some big conferences, and you will be probably shocked and horrified that very few hands go up when you say, how confident are you that your senior team have these capabilities? That's why SFIA is so important, because at that role-specific level, there is a dearth of competency premised off no capability analysis. So it's kind of a catch-22. You've got a great role to play in this. But so out of all of that, you're looking to build competency, and those are some of the things that you can do. And these slides will be made available to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. So down the far side there are some of the things that I do with my client organisations, and that you can do at a practical level to actually get the stuff working. So my final slide, the business case. This is a great piece of research. Dig it out. It's still there. It came out in 2012, but it was a global study. And what it identified was, if you not only invest in digital data and technical transformation, but you also invest in capability and competency, that high category on the top right there, they called in this research the digiterati, which I kind of liked. But anyway, I called them digital leaders in my research paper because that was more sensible. But here's the kick. If you're wanting to sell why you should be doing capability analysis and investing in especially in your managers and leaders, but in all people at all levels, then those digital leading companies or government organisations, because it was a global study, all types, all sizes, no exceptions was the language used in the research, outperformed their peers by 9%. They're up to 26% more profitable, and I'm sorry, government organisations do have interest in the bottom line. They will say, oh no, we're not interested in profit. Well, just put 26% better at the bottom line in there, and then enjoy up to 12% greater market cap, which is a corporate measure rather than a government measure. Those are numbers that have got telephone number size benefits in your large organisations and important measures for smaller organisations. Look up the research. It's actually a summary report, and it's a really great little piece of research, global study. So that's me. A whistle-stop tour through capabilities, competencies, the use of SFIA, and some practical stuff that you can do.
Great. Well, before we thank you very much, Lizzie, and Vic. Everyone join me in thanking our presenters today. And that brings us to the Q&A. So I think we have a few questions on the Slido app. I might just bring that up on the screen.
Please do.
And Rebecca, over here from GovTech Graduate Program and from Govis, is going to put the questions to you.
Sorry. When I self-assessed against the SFIA areas that were loosely aligned to me, I often fell between levels. What does this indicate?
Do you want me to pick that one?
Feel free.
Yeah. For me, I would say that people, when they're doing self-assessment, are often harder on themselves than not. There's good research around that. So I think it's just one of those things. Trust your gut. If you really think that you're higher or lower, just trust your gut. You're not going to get any competency framework that's going to give you a half level. But it might also signal that you've got a development need in that area. So it's quite possibly a signal for development.
Any tips for educating the manager or HR team about SFIA so it can be the basis of my professional development?
That's a really good question, and I'm actually asked that question quite often. And some people have said to me, oh, can you write me, or have you got a business case that I can give to my manager to explain it? I think the important things are all of the things that Lizzie hit around competencies and capabilities, and that I try to impress on everyone about maturing our industry. There's also this There's something really weird in New Zealand's psyche and DNA. You can all disagree with me if you like, but hiring managers like to employ perfectly formed seniors because they don't have to invest in them, right? So it's really easy to employ perfectly formed seniors. But actually what we need to do is invest in our nation generally and be employing people at graduate level, giving them a pathway to develop so they can become those seniors who will mentor the future graduates and the intermediates as they're progressing through their roles. So there's often an organisational DNA issue, not just with the manager, but the organisation as a whole around capability development and enabling people to progress. I know in government you have those salary bands, and that's often used as your progression measurement. Maybe there's something in trying to compel your manager to get a better link to how you can progress through the salary bands because they're well understood by managers as well. I hope that was helpful.
Can I add to what Vic's saying? I think this is a really important question because my overarching advice on managing upwards is hit them in the pocket. What do I mean by that? So first of all, when I was a CEO, I always gave my managers and staff the permission, because you've got to give them permission in some respects, to manage upwards. The reason why it's important is that if, for example, you know, and you're big enough to have an HR team, that you've got a big change coming up, and that's hundreds of thousands of dollars either in sunk cost or variable cost in hiring people to do it, in designing jobs. If you've got to do that, you can save a lot of money by using SFIA and going straight to, you know, globally recognised competency descriptors, as Vic was saying before. So there's a money saver, and just put some simple numbers around it. You know, if it's going to take 10 people in the change management team 3 weeks to do the job descriptions, how much time at an hourly rate could they save? Hit them in the pocket. The other thing I would say about professional development is, especially in IS and IT teams, this is high flight risk at the moment. Maybe a little less in Wellington at the moment with all the jobs that are around, but New Zealand employees in the IT and IS area are hot ticket overseas. We get poached. So that little simple thing of making sure that you pay attention to you know, your HR manager, or even educating your manager about the likelihood of flight risk if you're a supervisor, and just say, look, it's not going to cost us this much to invest in these people, but it may help us to retain these good people. And again, there are formulas that you can use to put some numbers around the cost benefit of developing your staff as opposed to buying in new ones. You know, it's kind of a no-brainer, really. So hit them in the pocket.
Thank you. Research teams are often in the same part of the organisation as IT and data warehousing. Does SFIA still work for qualitative researchers and evaluators?
Yes, and you'll see more in SFIA 9. Yes, definitely.
You talked about level 8 for board directors. Aren't boards typically there to guide on business governance and not necessarily need to be technical experts?
Yes, there is the argument. No, because if you think about what fiduciary responsibility means, it's kind of loosely making responsible use of resources, not just money. That's also around what they do. Now, if you think about, if you went back into that 2x2 matrix from MIT and looked at high investment but low capability development, this is where you've got your Nova pay. So you've got, you know, boards that sorry, you know, I'm a bit like Vic. There's no nice way of saying it. You've got well-intentioned people in serious governance roles with millions, sometimes billions of dollars at their disposal who do not have the competency to make those decisions. End of story. Read my thesis if you've got no life and no friends. And I'm happy to share. I've got a summary version, by the way. Yeah.
I guess following on to that, another question is how would you manage acknowledging that senior leaders are some of the least digitally capable?
Oh, I can do it really well. But
yeah, it's a really, really difficult one. And I've been kicking around this, as I said before, since 2016, this kind of government capability space, and been talking to ministers, the GCDO and others about the overall need to lift the capability at senior levels across government. There are some real challenges there, but that's been falling on deaf ears for a long time. So I haven't cracked how we solve that, but there are some agencies that are doing some interesting things. A few have put together governance boards where they've got private sector capabilities so that they're getting advice, because that's really important, and really important for governance boards generally at all levels, whether it's a business and their board of directors, or whether it's a governance board over a major project or a major program of investment. Getting specialist advice that's impartial with no vested interest, to be able to give you advice when it's not your area of expertise. I think that's really important. So there are some nice examples happening around the place, but generally speaking, this is something that we've really got to resolve, and really quickly, because we're going to see some investments in some silly AI products that are coming out.
absolutely. I mean, people just don't even understand the relationship between data. You haven't got a data strategy and you're talking about investing in AI. I mean, so, I think this question about AI impact on SFIA framework is a really interesting one. I don't know what's your take on that one.
So how will the trend of AI impact the SFIA framework besides cybersecurity and data protection? Well, in the framework, we will see AI competencies and capabilities and skills appearing in the framework. So there are some that will start to happen, but we will also start to see how AI fits into various different career pathways as well. I would hope the use and uptake of frameworks will improve with improved AI capability, and as we're all using different tools and technology, I would hope that the uptake will start to get embedded in a lot of different things that get automated as well. What do you think?
I think it's everything from overhyped, and it's not new. We've had variations of AI around for quite some time, and I really think that this issue of the competency at the top is going to start to really show. You cannot, there are laws that should be protecting us all to say that, not lack of competency at the top is not an excuse. So if you make a daft decision and it compromises your security because you've invested in some dodgy AI product, for example, just saying, that might happen. I just think that I'm biased. I'm totally biased. And the reason why I got interested in this topic is that back in the early 2000s, I sat on a number of different boards of directors. I'd been kind of doing my research and my master's in information systems type topics. And every time I asked a question about, well, how are you going to do that? Or how does your data or how does your platform support that? They go, oh, we don't need to worry about that. That's the IT department. But actually, your duty of care says you do need to worry about that, and you've got to be competent to make those decisions. Now, that's why it's so scary that the stats of capability in boards is still so low. So we've all got jobs in managing upwards, and maybe we need to do a blog to put that business case out there again. But I think that it's never been a better time to utilise the SFIA framework now, to build your business cases, to do those practical things on the uses of it.
I was just going to offer to write a blog to answer all the Slido questions if you like.
Good idea.
Great, we'll
Share
send them
that
to you.
with-
Yeah.
Do you want me to just do that quick competencies over skills? I think that Catherine's question, do you deliberately choose competencies over skills as a label? Yes, I do, because skills are a further granular level. You've got to have a cluster of skills to make up a competency. So it's another little mini building block. Well, that's my definition anyway.